The Howling Park. Part 1. The town of Grenton barely showed up on a map, just a smudge of faded ink between two ranges of pine-choked hills. But it had a legend that refused to die. Lucas stood at the rusted gates of the park, his breath fogging in the autumn air. The iron sign overhead creaked in the breeze. Windmere Playground, established 1952. Letters missing, paint peeling, but still intact. He glanced at his watch, 5:49 p.m., a minute before the hour. The townspeople had been very clear. If you're still inside the park when the first howl comes, don't run, just follow the rules. Lucas, ever the skeptic, had smiled when he first heard it. A children's rhyme, repeated in hushed voices as if saying it too loud might summon something. He came prepared, camera, recorder, notebook, and not an ounce of fear. The moment he stepped through the gate, the air shifted. The scent of wet leaves and rusted metal flooded his senses. The gravel path crunched beneath his boots, each step too loud, too sharp. Wind whispered through the skeletal branches, but the trees remained eerily still. The playground loomed ahead, a seesaw balanced perfectly, unmoving. A merry-go-round streaked with old handprints, some child-sized, some not. A single swing, swaying, slowly, on its own. Lucas raised his camera. Clack! The shutter echoed far louder than expected. It bounced off the trees and vanished like it had never happened. He checked the shot. Blurry. Odd. The lens had never failed him before. He turned toward the jungle gym. That's when he noticed it. Scratches on the metal bars. Dozens of them. Long, jagged, like fingernails. Some fresh. Whew! Lucas froze. The first howl, it didn't come from any animal he knew. It wasn't a coyote or wolf. It had range, rising and falling like a chorus, sung through windpipes made of smoke and bone. It echoed across the empty park and seemed to settle over his shoulders. Then came the second sound. Lucas. His name, whispered. He spun around. Nothing. Only the trees and the empty benches. Lucas, closer now. Almost playful. He backed up. "I don't believe in this crap," he muttered, forcing a laugh. "Audio hallucinations. I've read about this." Still, he remembered the rules. Don't answer. He looked down at his notebook. His own handwriting stared back at him, but it wasn't his penmanship anymore. 3 words had appeared beneath his notes, etched in trembling black ink. You were invited. Wind picked up suddenly, tearing through the branches above. Leaves danced like frantic hands, and the swing, now still, began to creak forward again, as if something unseen had climbed aboard. And then, from the far end of the park, came the sharp screech of rusted metal grinding. Lucas turned toward the sound and saw the merry-go-round begin to spin, slowly, on its own. The Howling Park, Part 2. The merry-go-round spun faster. Lucas stared, transfixed. No wind could do that. Not with such weight. Not with that deliberate rhythm. Jerking, pausing, jerking again, as if something unseen was pushing it with short, aggressive shoves. Squeak, grind, pause, squeak, grind. Each turn of the rusted platform sent out a metallic whine that made his teeth ache. He forced himself to step back, to break the stare, but something inside him twisted. the familiar instinct of prey sensing it's being watched. He backed toward the swing set. "Lucas!" The whisper was behind him now, right against his ear. He spun around, heart jackhammering in his chest. No one. Not even footprints on the gravel. Only that same cursed swing, now still again, as if it too had turned to watch. His fingers itched to reach for the park gates. "Run," his body screamed. But his brain, curious, stubborn, fought back. He grabbed his camera and snapped again, this time toward the merry-go-round. Clack. When he looked at the preview, his breath caught. In the photo, a figure, pale, small, sitting on the spinning platform. A little girl in a dress too old for this decade. Hair matted, head turned, not toward the camera, but toward him. Her mouth was open. Mid-song, mid-scream, the photo fuzzed for a moment, and then the image vanished. "Damn it," he whispered, clutching the camera tighter. "What the hell is this place?" Suddenly, the trees shifted. Not just the branches, but the trunks, the layout, the path he'd entered through. It was gone. No sign of the gate. Only dense trees pressing inward like a wall. "Rule 2, he muttered, recalling the rhyme. "When the howls start, do not try to leave the park." Too late. Lucas stumbled backward, the gravel seeming to pull at his shoes like sinking sand. He turned and bolted toward the benches, hoping to get a better vantage. As he ran, the air thickened. It was like breathing through syrup. His lungs burned. The world tilted slightly, just enough to make every step feel off balance. Creak, creak. Every swing on the frame began to move now, in unison. No wind, just rhythm, like a ritual or a lullaby. And from somewhere near the slide came humming. Soft, female, ancient. Lucas crouched behind the bench, trying to steady his breath. Hum, hum, hum. The melody was wordless, but it itched at the edges of his memory, like something half remembered from a childhood fever dream. That's when he noticed the carved initials on the bench, EML. His blood ran cold. Eleanor M. Lorne. The same name that had haunted his previous investigations. The same girl that had appeared in his lens. The same legend tied to this park. But Eleanor was supposed to have died in the 1950s, lost in this park after dark. Lucas's fingers trembled. The rules weren't warnings. They were guidelines for participation. He looked up. The fog had rolled in thick now, impossibly fast. The park was gone, swallowed in gray. Only the creaking swings and the turning carousel remained in view. And the humming? Now it was directly behind him. The Howling Park, Part 3. Lucas spun around. No one was there, just the fog, thick as curdled milk swallowing everything beyond a few feet. The cold gnawed through his sleeves, wrapping his skin in a damp, numbing grip. His breath curled in front of him, then vanished unnaturally fast, like the park was drinking it in. "Eleanor?" His voice trembled. The only reply came from the wind, a low whispering hiss, like dozens of children murmuring just out of reach. He lifted his camera and slowly panned across the path. The live screen flickered and glitched, static crawling across the display like it was struggling to show what didn't want to be seen. But then, amidst the grainy haze, a white figure emerged, A little girl stood beneath the rusted lamppost. It wasn't lit, but somehow a faint, sickly glow surrounded her, like light bleeding from nowhere. Eleanor. He recognized her instantly. Pale face, dark hollow eyes, the white dress streaked with dried mud. Her lips moved silently, forming words that never came. Lucas froze. She raised one arm and pointed to the old metal slide on the playground. He stepped forward. The ground squelched wetly beneath his shoes, each step like sinking into soft, rotting earth. At the base of the slide, something caught the light. A silver necklace. The pendant was a sunflower, dull and blackened with age. As his fingers wrapped around it, cold shot through his veins, and then came the sound. Scream. The top of the slide shook violently. Lucas looked up. There was no child at the top, no movement, but the darkness at the slide's mouth began to recede, peeling back like a curtain. Not a slide anymore. A metal spiral staircase leading downward, rusted and yawning like a throat. His heart thundered in his ears. How could something like this exist here? He raised his flashlight. A wall emerged beside the staircase, its surface scorched and cracked, with drawings made in charcoal. A circle. Inside it, 3 children, hand in hand. One with curly hair like Eleanor. One with a birthmark under his eye, just like Lucas. Below the image, scrawled in shaking, childlike handwriting, "The children must return for the song to end." Lucas stumbled back. The world tilted. His breath quickened, shallow and panicked. Then, silence. Total silence. No wind, no swings creaking, not even the chirp of night insects. Only the pounding of his heart, and then a whisper, distant but unmistakable, drifting up from the staircase. "Lucas, come back. We're not finished singing." The Howling Park, Part 4. Lucas hesitated at the mouth of the staircase. The rusted metal groaned beneath his foot as he tested the first step, the noise echoing unnaturally through the silence, as though the stairwell had swallowed time itself. The flashlight flickered, its beam stretching down into the spiral like a vein of light penetrating a corpse. The walls around him were tighter now, slick with condensation and faintly pulsing, as if the very structure was breathing. The children must return for the song to end. That sentence clawed at the edges of his thoughts. Step by step, he descended. With each footfall, the air grew thicker, denser, harder to breathe. A distant hum began, low, vibrating, like a choir warming up in a void. It was subtle at first. Then it grew louder, closer, dissonant. Not voices, moaning. 100 sorrowful tones, layered and weaving into one another like wind through shattered glass. Lucas's grip on the railing tightened. The metal was warm, wrongly warm, as if touched by something living below. Then, the stairs opened into a chamber. He stepped into it, and immediately, the sound stopped. The room was circular, carved from black stone that glistened with moisture, and something else. Red stains, old but unmistakable. The walls were covered in symbols, circles, spirals, mouths open mid-song. In the center stood a music stand, rusted and broken, and beneath it, the black book, still open. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. The pages fluttered without wind, stopping on one line written in faded ink. When 3 return, the silence may sing again. He turned slowly. 3 stone choir stalls faced the book, each carved with names long faded. But he could just make out one, Eleanor M. Lorne. The second was empty. The third, he stepped closer and saw his own name, carved crudely, shaky. Lucas M. Lorne. "No," he whispered, "that's not my—" But the memory struck him like ice down his spine. His grandmother, Eleanor, her stories, her music box that played a twisted lullaby in reverse. How she used to hum under her breath when she thought no one was listening. How he always felt like she was waiting for something or someone to come back. Suddenly, the moaning returned, stronger now, surrounding him. The walls pulsed red, throbbing like a wound. The book snapped shut with a metallic bang, and the music began. A children's choir, out of tune, out of time, singing from somewhere beyond the stone walls. Their voices rose and fell like a tide of sorrow, and Lucas could hear a name buried in the notes. Lucas. He stumbled backward. The light on his flashlight blew out with a hiss. Darkness. And then, a match struck behind him. The soft flare lit up a tiny, pale face. Eleanor. She stood behind him, eyes wet, lips trembling. "You came back," she whispered. "You remember now, don't you?" Lucas shook his head. "What is this? What do you want?" Her voice was soft but final. "You were the last to leave. That's why it never ended." The choir grew louder. The walls cracked. And Lucas realized this wasn't about finding the ritual. He had been part of it all along. The Howling Park, Part 5. The sound of Eleanor's whisper echoed through Lucas's skull like the clashing of cymbals, each syllable rattling his bones. Her face was pale, ghostly, her eyes too wide, too empty. Her voice was a broken lullaby, low and haunting. "You don't understand. You never did." The air grew colder. He could feel it creeping down his spine, wrapping around his throat, tightening. His feet felt like they were sinking into the stone floor, heavy, sluggish, as if the very earth was pulling him into it. "You are the last piece," she said, her lips curling into a smile that never reached her eyes. "The song must be completed. The door will open, but only if you sing." The walls around him vibrated in response, the ancient stones groaning with the weight of centuries-old secrets. The moaning rose again, louder, the disjointed voices of the choir wrapping themselves around him like chains. He could see the stone altar now, its surface cracked and stained with something dark, redder than before, something that smelled faintly of decay. The book lay open again, as if it were waiting for him to reach out. He stepped forward, the noise of his footsteps drowned beneath the rising chant. "Lucas!" The voices, the sound, the smell, they were all so real now. The air was thick, pressing down on him, suffocating. His vision blurred as the walls began to move, the shadows twisting and shifting, warping into faces, shapes, figures. Faces that weren't just made of shadows. They were alive, watching him. could hear the words inside his head, the song, the ancient forbidden song that had been part of this ritual for so long. He had heard it before, deep inside him, buried in memories. Suddenly, the altar flared with an unnatural light, casting shadows that twisted grotesquely on the walls. The music surged, slow, mournful, drawn out, rising higher and higher until it felt like his very soul was being pulled into the sound. He closed his eyes. No, he couldn't do it. He couldn't be a part of this horrible legacy, this song of the damned. The room shifted again. This time, Eleanor's voice was different. It was clear, sharp, commanding. "You have to sing," she insisted, her voice ringing louder than the choir. But Lucas didn't want to sing. He wanted to leave. His hands trembled as he reached toward the book. He knew what he had to do. The choice was simple. Destroy it. Break the cycle. Bang! The noise came from somewhere far behind him. A deafening slam, so loud it shattered the air like glass. He spun around, heart racing. He thought for a split second he could hear his own breathing over the cacophony of the voices, over the howling wind that whipped through the cracks in the walls. The altar began to crack. A loud, deep rumble filled the room, making the stones quake under his feet. The walls closed in again, tighter, tighter, until the air was suffocating, the weight pressing down on his chest. Lucas had no more time to think. He grabbed the book, the pages slipping under his fingertips like oily skin. The room screamed. The choir screamed. The air screamed. And then the world went silent. For a moment, everything stopped. And then the song began again.